Today on Locked On Red Wings, Simon Edvinsson is eligible for a contract extension. Should the Red Wings prioritize that this offseason or wait until next summer?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brother, I am exhausted right now. I am trying so hard to cut out excess caffeine in the afternoons. Normally around 3 o'clock, I get an energy drink, and I have been getting scolded from all areas of my life that's having a daily energy drink habit is very bad for you. And I've discovered very quickly that cutting it out will lead to general lethargy and headaches. So to put into perspective how down bad I was for those energy drinks.
Yeah. Your wife is a nurse, no?
Mm-hmm.
So she is knows what
She's
talking
leading.
about.
She's leading the charge, but she's not the only one who's been on my case.
Well, no, I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm just saying you should listen to her. Is my point. I think, it's wild that you are going through that. My dad did a similar thing. This is I was pretty young. This is probably 15-ish years ago now. Was a big caffeine guy, all day, every day, pretty much. And he stopped. And not only did he have the headaches and have to get through that, and obviously the tiredness and the lack of energy that you get from not getting caffeine all day, but he also ended up losing a ton of weight. You should listen to your wife. She's
in general,
smarter
yes,
than you.
But I always like to say if God didn't want me to have energy drinks at 3 o'clock, he wouldn't have given me 2 kidneys. So, there's a second one for a reason.
Just a terrible mindset. Just awful. But
welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. We're going to talk about Simon Edvinsson on today's episode. Before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Scotty, Simon Edvinsson is officially eligible, has been officially eligible for a contract extension since the league year turned over back in, June? Late June when the draft began. Once trades were able to be done again, league year turned over. He's eligible for an extension. He's got 1 year left on his ELC, and he's pacing to be Moritz Seider-esque type contract. Obviously not one-for-one players, but this is a top pair guy that is a giant 6'6" Swede with a little bit of a mean streak to him and has the ability to play power play and penalty kill. Minus the Swede part, sounds awfully similar to Moritz Seider's situation. So the question becomes, with the salary cap rising, do you think, Scotty, the Red Wings should prioritize extending Simon Edvinsson now versus next offseason when his ELC is up?
Well, I don't know. So, for starters, if there was, I think, smoke on that front, I would imagine it would be talked about a little bit more. Now, the organization is notoriously very tight-lipped with really everything that they do. So maybe that's not a great example to start with. We haven't heard about anything, but we haven't, for whatever that's worth. And we're getting, it's August at the end of the week. We're getting pretty late into the off season here. I think that it probably makes more sense to wait. I think that he is still young enough where you are in a position as an organization where you aren't 100% sure where he falls in long term. And that's I know some people hear that and probably scoff and go obviously he's the second best defenseman on the team. Yeah, he definitely is right now. I think that's a pretty low bar, but he definitely is. I still think there's a little bit of uncertainty in whether you're getting a bona fide top pair guy for the next 15 years, like you kind of thought with Seider, or whether he's like, can play anywhere, in the top 4, either of the top 2, kind of fill a need type of thing. I don't know. Like, I don't want to make it like he's an incredible young player and was the highest regarded prospect in the organization for a reason. I love Edvinsson. I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm like going to bat against him or playing devil's advocate. I just think that it probably makes sense to wait. I'm not sure a season into his career if we're like, all right, yeah, like this is definitely like $8 to $9 million player for the next decade, 100% certainty. Like I'm not, I don't know, you can't do that with every single player that has like a solid promising rookie year, or else you're going to be wrong a lot. So I think it probably makes sense to wait. And with the cap already having gone up but will continue to rise, you have a little bit more wiggle room in that department too.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up the cap, because first off, I agree with you. I think it does behoove the Red Wings to wait until next offseason more than do it this offseason. But there are benefits to doing it sooner rather than later, too. And that rising cap is actually a double-edged sword. On one hand, obviously, rising another $10 million gives you another $10 million to work with. But also, a lot of the agents are going to argue based on cap percentage, not on cap hit.
For sure.
They're not going to come to the negotiating table and say, I want Seider's contract. They're going to say, I want the same slice of the pie that Seider got at that time. When Seider signed his contract was worth 9.7% of the salary cap. If they wait until next year and the salary cap goes up to like 105, somewhere in that vicinity, I mean, you're looking at paying him, do the math real quick on my calculator app. That's not how you do that. Probably about $10 million, right? Like that's in the range that you're going to be paying Simon Edvinsson, which is, granted, that's just based on me doing a calculation on the app that I didn't even put in properly. But let me try that again.
Do you want to put it in properly right now?
945,
there
just
you go.
shy, between $9 and $10 million. Again, I'm not a mathematician, but
Clearly.
So can you swallow 9.45 for Simon Edvinsson? Granted, Steve Yzerman is going to grind him down a little bit here and probably try and get it at a lower number, maybe shave a year off to bring the cap hit down like he did with Moritz Seider. But these are two defensemen that are fairly comparable. Again, not one for one, but Simon Edvinsson for long stretches of last year in his first full season in the NHL played on a pair with Moritz Seider. In his first, he didn't really get a lot of power play time because of the fact that Erik Gustafsson existed up until the end of the season when Gustafsson went down with injury. But he got penalty kill time. He was on the second unit penalty kill most of the season with his defensive partner. He led your defense in 5-on-5 scoring, which is a huge thing to keep in mind, too, when you talk about Simon Edvinsson. He had 24 points, which is 6 more points at 5-on-5 than Moritz Seider had. Granted, again, Seider led the defense in points because he had the power play unit 1. Like, this is a guy who can do it all. Evolving Hockey has his player card at 69% overall, with a 76 percentile in offense and a 52 percentile in defense in his first full season in the NHL. He got, next to Moritz Seider, the toughest deployments on the team, who, again, reminder, Moritz Seider had some of the toughest deployments in the NHL. So if Simon Edvinsson is just a tick below him, right, Edvinsson's in that conversation league-wide as well. This is a guy that they've immediately put a ton on. So if you wait until next year to sign the contract, yes, it's not a guarantee that it pans out, right? But it does mean that you will hypothetically end up having to pay a higher cap hit than doing it now. That's my devil's advocate argument for doing it now rather than later.
Which I think is totally fair, and I don't really disagree with anything you said. I also, a point that I always like to bring up in these conversations, because I feel like as fans, we tend to only look at trades or signings from our team's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It takes two to tango, buddy. And
100%.
if he knows his value and he knows what type of price tag and his agent knows what type of price tag he could get if they wait another year when the cap goes up again and he stays healthy and has a phenomenal sophomore season, he knows that price tag could go up as well. That's not like us being like, wow, we're geniuses. Like, very much no. Like that, these guys are right. These agents are agents for a reason. They know what they're doing, and I think that if there was any counterpoint to like why would this not get done immediately, it probably more than anything is just that I'm not sure it makes a ton of sense. Again, like for either side, maybe like certainty, but even if the Red Wings are in love with the idea, I'm not sure that that means that Edvinsson and his camp are.
100%. Scotty, we're going to head to a quick break. When we return, I want to expand a little bit more on that because there's one big reason why I think Simon Edvinsson's camp would say, let's wait another year. Talk about that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of the endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in each section for you. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. And of course, you toggle on that the Gametime guarantee, and you'll see no hidden fees. They'll all be presented right in front of you. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, the biggest reason I feel that Simon Edvinsson and his camp, to your point, would say, let's wait another year, is because of the fact that Simon Edvinsson hasn't really gotten a solidified opportunity on the power play yet. And that is something that Moritz Seider got a lot of before he signed his major extension. Now, granted, again, power play too, right? We had Shane Gostisbehere in the final year of Seider's ELC, who was quarterbacking power play 1, but Seider got consistent power play unit 2 time, which Edvinsson didn't see until Gustafsson went down. Edvinsson wants to prove I can do it at all areas of the ice. So I think for his camp, especially again, going back to with that cap raising, he can get a larger chunk of the pie, right? Or the same chunk of the pie, but at a higher rate because the cap is rising. I think his camp would go, well, let's just reconvene next offseason when I have more data underneath me to support my cause.
Yeah, which I think is totally fair. I do wonder if the Red Wings, I don't know, maybe have like a somewhat similar to the Larkin situation where they're just like, we're not going to give anybody not named Seider more like a significant bigger chunk than Seider. Does that make sense?
They can't keep doing that forever, though, with the cap jumping the way it is. Like, to keep Edvinsson beneath Seider, if Edvinsson has a final year of his ELC season similar-ish to Seider, I mean, it would take an act of God. Like, the cap is rising too much to keep that internal cap structure for too much longer. It made sense when the cap was going up $1-2 million a year, but we're seeing a $20 million jump in a 2-year span. It's just, I don't see how that's possible. I think you have to raise that bar.
So, I agree with you. So, what are the odds that the Wings just take this super slowly then? And they just go through the process like any other young player. And they go ELC, RFA, do the potentially arbitration stuff, whatever. And they go through and just wait until he's about to be a UFA before they give him a big contract.
I mean, I think that with a guy of Edvinsson's caliber, I would not go that route, because with a guy of Edvinsson's caliber, they keep bridging him until he's just about to get to UFA status. Basically, you're consistently and constantly raising the price tag of that player. And who knows, 5 years down the line, or however many years it may be when he is UFA eligible, what that contract will look like.
Right.
That's why you lock them up early.
For sure, right. And we've had that conversation a million times. I guess my point more so was, why would Edvinsson not try to drag his feet and try to wait? I mean, like, obviously you get paid more sooner. Like, that's the double-edged sword.
The security of it, too, is the big one, I would argue.
Yeah, for sure.
I
don't know. I feel like, again, they're not like unaware of how talented he is, and how good he could end up being. And so I feel like I feel like there's a real chance, especially in this weird era where, the cap is going up so much year after year, for this few year stretch here, that like the cap is increasing by so much all at once, that I feel like that doesn't exactly overlap with his timeline. I get that, but they might wait until after that, when a couple years down the road, when the cap stabilizes, and then talk longer term deal, because
it's possible. But in the meantime, he is going to be risking his body on a night to night basis on the hope he stays healthy and is good enough to cash in on that payday a few years from now, which is why a lot of these young players, I would imagine, take these long deals right away, because you get a higher cap rate, a higher cap hit when you sign the long-term extension rather than the bridge. So you're making more money in the immediacy while you get the long-term security. Plus, it's better for the Red Wings if they can lock him up long-term now, because, I mean, Dom Luszczyszyn of The Athletic just did an article on Tuesday where Lucas Raymond he ranked the 8th best contract in the NHL a year after he signs that extension.
Yeah.
Because $8 million for a guy who hasn't even hit his pinnacle yet in the rising cap league benefits the Red Wings, which again, why that's the reward part of the risk and reward of extending him sooner rather than later. And I mean, either way, I am in camp, if be it this year or next year, extend him 8 years. And you want to get that extension done before the new CBA kicks in, which is, I believe, September of 2026.
Yeah.
So that way you can get the 8th year. That way you get that player at a significantly a better contract in the rising cap era, but also get that long-term deal as well. Like, it just makes sense for all parties involved to sign a long-term deal if possible. And he is a guy I want to sign to an 8. Like, I can already tell you 1 full year into his career, like, this is a guy who's going to keep getting better, and he's going to be a top pair guy. I want to lock him up. I do agree with you still. I would wait 1 more year, just get another year of data. Yes, it's going to push up how much you're going to owe him, but it's going to be worth it for Simon Edvinsson. And I think that way you just have less of the risk along with the reward, because that's the big reason why you wouldn't do it now, is because you sign him to an extension now, and what if next year he's terrible, and it's like, oh boy, now you have to pay him big bucks. So I think it makes sense for everybody involved to wait 1 more year, 1 more offseason, even though there are benefits to doing it now, and then give him, I would assume you're in the same camp as me, 8 years if possible.
Yeah, I'm totally fine locking him up as long as as long as you can, man. Similar to Seider and Raymond, for sure.
So that's that argument. I do think the bridging point you brought up is really poignant, though, because I could see a influx of bridge deals over the next couple years because of exactly what you said. So there is that possibility that Simon Edvinsson does do that, where he says, I just want a bridge, and while the cap is rising, and then we can reconvene once it's $20-30 million higher. Right. Now, again, 2 to tango. Maybe Yzerman looks at that and goes, hell no. Either you take a 1 year deal or you take an 8 year deal. We're not doing 3 years and reconvening, but that's where you get into a situation where I don't know what's going on in the locker room. I don't know what's going on in the front office.
Yeah. I mean, we're basically just going in circles, playing devil's advocate with ourselves over and over.
Right.
Like,
isn't that fun though?
Who knows? Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. That's how you have to cover like every angle. I'm just saying I'm not sure that the negotiations will be this like ring around the rosy. That's all.
Well, it wasn't either with Seider and Raymond. It took both of them until basically training camp to agree to contract. So it's going to be interesting. We'll head to a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about a couple other players that next few seasons may need extensions and how we kind of view that unfolding or how we want it to unfold. So stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Scotty, this was the idea you had brought up for our segment 3 here, because obviously talking 3 segments about Simon Edvinsson alone would just be mind-numbing for everyone involved. But the Red Wings are going to have a handful of contracts to set up or to make decisions on, I should say, in the next couple of years. Not just RFAs either, right? Guys like, Alex DeBrincat, Andrew Kopp, Ben Chiarot, just off the top of your head, which of the players that are going to need, RFA or UFA, new contracts or are on expiring deals, do you foresee the Red Wings taking a shot at bringing back?
Well, I think it depends on what your timeline is. I mean, we talked about it. We were texting about it this morning. Like, I think that the second that Marco Kasper is eligible, that's going to become the big conversation within the fan base, right? Like, how feasible is that? Obviously, I think right now it's he can't. But even if he could, I feel like we're too early in it. You want to see how he plays this year, etc. So that'll be a big one. Obviously, if we want to break that down further, the closer we get to the that being a possibility, we certainly can down the road. I think for me, pretty comfortably the biggest one is DeBrincat. I like Ben Chiarot. I mean, of the names you just listed, right? Like Ben Chiarot is not going to come back, and if he does, it'll be like a 1-year 7th D-man deal. Like he's not going to come back and be get a multi-year deal and top pair money. Like I feel like Cat is the big one where even at the end of this current deal, he will still be in his prime years, and he just came off of a fantastic season. Mm-hmm. So that is and for a team that desperately is trying to get 6 players to fill out a top 6, losing one would probably not be in their best interest. So like obviously, like Patrick Kane is technically in that conversation just because, he's
that's a year by year thing,
right?
Like, we got to see how he
reevaluate every single year type of thing because of his age and injury history. I really think that comfortably the biggest one in that group is Cat.
Yeah, and real quick on Kasper, like you said, he is not eligible for a contract extension yet. It'll be next summer. He is eligible, but again, rehash that same conversation we just had with Edvinsson. Probably wait until the ELC expires at the end of the 26-27 season to really address that extension. And then, like all the other top-tier prospects, if you can lock him up long-term because he continues to progress in the way that we think he can, then yes, you do that. DeBrincat, I agree, is the most interesting conversation to be had. I agree. If he was a UFA right now, I would say lock him up long term. Because of the way he produced this year, he got back to being the DeBrincat we traded for. The DeBrincat we've seen before in other stops with Chicago, right? I would say lock him up long term. I do have a little bit of... It gives me pause when I think about the fact that he'll be 29 in his year, and that'll be the new CBA in his UFA year. He'll be 29, so you can sign him for a max of 7 years because he's with your team. If you were out there on the free agent market, you could only get him for 6 at that point. I would what's the word I'm looking for? I would bristle a little bit at the idea of signing DeBrincat at 29 years old to a 7-year deal, because then you're signing him till he's 36. I think a lot of that conversation has to do with where the Red Wings are at. Are we legitimately in our cup window by the time his deal has ended? In 2 seasons from now, are we in a position where we're going for it? Because if that's the case, then I could, bearing that we have the cap space, swallow a max length extension to capitalize on his prime and our cup window then. But if we're in the same spot as we are now in two seasons, I mean, we have a lot bigger problems on our hand than signing DeBrincat to a 7-year deal at that point. Because if we're in the same spot we are now in 2 years, and you're thinking about giving DeBrincat 7 years. I mean, if you can get it for shorter term, sure. But like if in 2 years we're still at 85 points, 87 points, 90 points, and not making the playoffs, we have a bigger problem on our hands that we may need to address rather than he might be gone by the deadline if that's the case, honestly.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that at all. I also think, I don't know. There's so much nuance with looking at like what the team is going to look like in the future. Who knows? But I think that if the Wings are still like just barely missing the postseason with him, like what are you going to do exactly? Like you still have Seider, Raymond, Larkin all long term. You might have Edvinsson long term by then. Like you're not going to blow it up and start over. You're not going to you're not going to move all of those pieces and start over. Like those are your pillars. You are paying them as such. They are under term, long term because of that. So I think that becomes a really interesting conversation. But hopefully this is all in vain, and it's just, the Wings are better and they can hold on to good players because they're a playoff team that's 90 plus points, and who cares?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you're hoping Danielson, Kosa are all with the team, and you're worried more about signing them to long-term extensions as well. So you have all those guys. You also have Soderblom, Berggren, Albert Johansson, who are going to be, RFAs, Carter Mazer. Young guys will be on the roster that are going to be probably just as big a problems as extending a guy like DeBrincat into off seasons from now. Same thing with Marco Kasper. I mean, they're up at the same time. You have to think about Kasper and DeBrincat at the same time, because they're both going to be, open to new contracts. Obviously, you have the ability, you have the control on Marco Kasper, but it's just the DeBrincat one's very interesting. As of right now, I would sign him for sure. But if you're in 2 years in the same spot, well, you can't keep beating your head against the wall. So maybe it's time for a change, But I agree. Sometimes it's harder to get better at that position than it is,
right?
Than it is just to keep what you got. The devil that you know, right? That's what a lot of teams decided this year, was with the cap rising, that they're going to stick with the devils they know rather than test the market when free agency, just keep the guys that they have. Brock Besser, I'm looking at you. You jerk. Broke my heart. Scotty, do you have any final thoughts on anything that we talked about today?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode on Friday. Stay tuned. First episode of August. It'll be August by the time we're back. Fascinating. We'll be back with a new episode then. Same time, same place.
Weirdo.
Your team.
Every day.
Every day.